Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, and King Thor, issue number 4 of 4. Damn it, it's the last time I get to say that. It's the last time I get to say that. All right, anyway, so a bunch of people made this. King Thor, conclusion, what is the spirit of thunder? Jason Aaron is the writer. Esad Ribic did the main art and cover. Mike Svorcina did the main color art. VC's Joe Sabino did the letters. Mike Del Mundo and Steve Epting did the variant cover, and Jay Bowen did the logo with Thor created by Stanley and Jack Kirby. And all of these guys here did contributing flashback and stuff like that art. So yeah, there's that. Okay, this was a pretty good book. This wasn't the greatest book in the world. Of course, I also didn't think this was the greatest run in the world. This is not an insult. It's not an insult at all. The idea that it's even up for contention, that it could be one of the greatest runs ever, is sure as hell saying something. Consider we've got 80 plus years of superhero comic book history. That says a lot, okay? Like, let's just face facts right here. Even if you hated this run and you couldn't stand it, it's probably just going to burn you for the rest of your life that Jason Aaron's name will forever be spoken, not in hushed whispers, you know what I'm saying? Not in dark corners of freaking basements where dwellers like that roam. No, 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 no. Out in the open, publicly, openly. Hey, think it's time to start working about making a movie for that. I wonder which phase of Marvel is going to be based on Jason Aaron's run. Yeah, like that. This is not just a part of the conversation. This is sometimes a conversation starter. At the very least, it can be a conversation finisher. Is this as good as Walter Simon's run? In my opinion, no. And unfortunately, I'm going to say barely even close, because it took 7 years to do what he did in 2. and one built off of the other without the shadow of a doubt. Is it a bad thing? No, it takes genius to recognize genius. That's the facts, all right? So, yeah, there's no complaints here. This was called the Sound of Thunder, and this is very fitting. It's very fitting. You got to actually read the comic book to know what the Sound of Thunder is. It's very Conan-esque, like the movie, the original movie. The Conan the Barbarian movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger, because, you know, like, what is the riddle of steel? Well, the riddle of steel is a freaking awesome riddle to contemplate, you know what I'm saying? And here, the answer, unfortunately, is kind of given, but I guess it's one of those things where it kind of has to be nowadays. We've often wondered at the riddle of steel forever, and there are so many different great concepts for what that riddle of steel is. You know what I'm saying? The idea that, you know, steel fails, flesh doesn't. No, flesh can be killed. Steel will last, you know, you'll see steel on the battlefield when there are just bones littering the battlefield. You're saying, what's the riddle of steel? That is pointless without the will to lift it. Oh, crap, Green Lantern. But the idea is that that's something that can actually be spoken of and contemplated, and people can bring counter theories to mind, and who cares? You know what I'm saying? It's like, what is the riddle of thunder? You know what I'm saying? It bothers me that it was only brought up here. It kind of bugs me, but the backstory to it, I kind of wish that this is something that, just imagine this if you will. If Aaron would have thought about what is thunder, what is the secret of thunder, with the first issue that he started with the first issue of Thor that he had done, all right? Then imagine that if it was finally answered in this issue, as opposed to brought up in this issue and then finally answered in this issue. Oh my God. Now you're talking about the greatest freaking run in the history of creation, that he based everything off of this one idea. That would have cinched it, locked it, forget about everybody else who's ever done comic books. You heard me right. That would have been amazing. But instead, it was just something that he kind of, not even necessarily threw in, but it did feel almost like he just threw that in here. Like, hey, you know what'd be cool? And it was cool. It was cool. But it wasn't the greatness that it deserved it to be. Gorr is soundly defeated in this. The idea of Gorr was right, and, Gorr was right, but I didn't care for the but. For the sake of conversation, spoiler really quick. I'm going to put my hand up in the air, and while it's up, that's going to be the spoiler. So mute yourself if you don't want to hear the spoiler for the but, all right? But anyway, so here it goes, and you can unmute after my hand goes down. Okay, here it goes. Gorr was right, but Thor is Thor. Yeah, I gave 2 squirts for that. Literally, it was the dumbest thing I could possibly imagine. How about instead this? And you could say that mine is the dumbest thing in the world too. I'm not offended by that. Gorr is Gorr, but who cares? You see, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if Gorr is right. Sure, maybe Gorr is right. Maybe he was. The idea is that if everybody believes he was, then he was. But if there's a voice of contention, if there's a difference of opinion, so let's say Gorr was right, okay? The world, the universe, everything and everyone would be better off without gods in them. Sure. At the same time, who cares? Because it is what it is. This is what it is. There are gods in the universe. You kind of needed gods in the universe. What, gods show up, create the universe, and then just vanish? Sure. But this could also go back to religion. Moses asking God, hey, listen, I believe you. I believe in you and whatnot, but I'm just curious, did you rest on the 7th day? And then God telling Moses, I want you to grab 2 buckets of water, fill them up, hold them out. So he held them up. Moses was a strong guy. A lot of people, if you actually read the Bible, Moses was a very strong human, like Captain America level strength, right? Moses eventually got tired, started reaching. Anybody who's in the military knows being in the front leaning rest position or holding your rifle, a 7.5-pound rifle in front of you. That's it. And still, oh my God, muscle failure. You know what I'm saying? Your body starts shaking and whatnot because your willpower is stronger than your muscles, but at some point the body will fail. With all of that, wow. Holding out that water, eventually reaches muscle failure. He drops, the water spills everywhere. And God says to Moses, now, if I rested, what would happen to the entire universe that I'm holding up? So, at the very end of this, there's a very lengthy bit by Jason Aaron, as is pretty mandatory. I would actually be really upset with Jason Aaron if he didn't write something at the end. He wound up writing a freaking thesis proposal. Wow. That being said, this is something I figured I would find on academia.com for crying out loud. Whether you like Jason Aaron's run or Jason Aaron or not, I don't think that you could read this whole thing and not get a little moved. All right, so he definitely appeased that part of the audience without the shadow of a doubt in my mind. Nobody can argue that. Nobody can take that away. It showed his love for things. But one of the things that he pointed out was, I'm not particularly religious. I've never really believed in God or gods. That's fine, but maybe studying more on religion would have helped in this particular regard, because I think that there was just so many better messages that could have been sent in that regard. But again, does that take away from what he has done? No, absolutely not. Like I said, conversation starter, possible conversation ender. I just see the parts where it could have been so much better. Another part where it could have been so much better is the idea that while this will make a hell of an omnibus, and I would hate to have to be the guy who had to put together the single volume omnibus of Jason Aaron's run, because this is not just Thor, this also involves the Jane Foster Valkyrie, at least several of those issues so far as they've come out, even though I stopped reading them. This is going to involve several issues of the Avengers. This is going to involve the tie-ins for certain events. This is going to involve the War of the Realms events. This is going to involve the freaking, what the heck was that? Fear Itself. No, not Fear Itself. Original Sin. This is going to involve his Original Sin run. And that was when Nick Fury actually said at the very end, and he whispered Gorr was right. It's like, first of all, how do you even know who Gorr is? Okay, it's Nick Fury. He's the man on the wall, so now he's got, intrigue on everything in the cosmos. Okay, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. He did actually have access to the Watcher's eye, so I guess I get it. You know what I'm saying? Whatever. But, I think of that, and all of a sudden I think to myself, you know what's one of the best things about the ending of this book, the ending of his run, is that it didn't turn out that the orb was the ultimate villain behind everything. Because let's face it, I believe Jason Aaron was the creator of the orb, and he really likes that stupid AF character. Like, that is just the dumbest character ever. What is all that squishy sound? Oh, it's just the way that I am. I can't help it. Dude, just enough. What a stupid concept for a character. But whatever. That's just me. That's just me. Maybe you like the orb. I know Jason Aaron obviously loves the orb. I'm just genuinely proud of Jason Aaron for not turning out that the person behind Gorr and all this crazy stuff that's happening was actually the orb. Squish, squish, squish. Ah, so you've seen through my secret plan. You've seen through. Oh my God. I would have just lost my crap. I'd have probably become a comics creator right there. Like, rip. Oh my God. By the way, curses upon that. Anyway, the way that this ended, it was a solid all right. I really like the story at the end about Thor being thrown out by Odin because, he cried during the storm, and the implications of what that really meant, what it really was, how Odin was wrong. One of the things that's always kind of bothered me in comics is that, and actually realistically in all the comics, I don't know any comic book that's ever really gotten Odin right. I mean, Odin is the wise guy. He's an asshole, you know what I'm saying? But for the most part, even Neil Gaiman, everybody's always gotten the idea that Odin was a ridiculously wise old hermit. He was many things, but one of the ideas is that he's this old hermit. He's ridiculously wise, and he would teach these amazing lessons through his wisdom in ways that you wouldn't understand. He was basically Mr. Miyagi before anybody ever thought of the idea of the Karate Kid. You know what I'm saying? Wax on, wax off, paint the fence, you know what I'm saying? Sand on, sand off, paint the house. What am I doing all these stupid things for? Show me, sand the floor. You know what I'm saying? Look, I'm protecting you from getting kicked in the nuts. Like, this is what I'm talking about. You know, so this was great things, these great lessons. And he would usually do it by insulting you. Especially Thor. He would teach Thor great wisdom by insulting and demeaning him and showing him your pride is what's going to get a hold of you. That's what's going to get ahead of you, you know? But there have been different interpretations of Odin. I just wish that a comic book would actually show that. Maybe I have to do that. Yeah, sure. One of these days. I keep on talking about it. Anyway, I think that this was a pretty good ending to the story as a whole. 7 years, you can't even just call it, the issues that he's done and all the different runs on Thor that he's done. There's been several. What he did with Jane Foster, all of that crazy stuff. Like, wow, he's done a lot, and it's expansive. So while I wouldn't want to actually be the person to tell this entire story, or at least compile the entire story, there are going to be several comic book YouTube channels, and I'm pretty sure that Rob Explains is going to be the premier of all of them, who's just going to sit back and be like, okay, guys, let me tell you about this incredible story. Oh, all right, check this out. And he's just going to go into like every single thing, every major point that has happened. And while that's not me necessarily making fun of Rob, it is me pointing out the flaw that I see in his system. All he does is talk about the high points of something. The thing is that this run really exemplifies what Rob, Comics Explained, whatever, personifies, right? It's not about the intricacies of this, that, or the other thing. It's not about those deeper explanations of anything. No, it's about hitting on the high points and talking about those. Because everything about this comic book, or everything about Jason Aaron's run, in my opinion, were these really high concepts, these high points, these great moments where he's like, oh, I've got a great idea. Now, how do I work that into a story? Interesting way of going about it. You know what I'm saying? It's really just about hitting all those high points, and we've got to, in my opinion at least, my experience is suffering through the lull in between high points. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what really exemplifies it for me, is all the lows. But make no mistake, when the story is retold over campfires, you know what I'm saying, and wherever you're going to be retelling the story or telling people about the gists of, or when Rob explains it, it is going to be about hitting on all those high points. And it is going to make this arc, well, not this arc, it's going to make this run seems so much better than it actually was, in my opinion. While actually reading everything all the way through, I think would be, while not a snore fest, certainly there would be a lot of Z's in it. You get what I'm saying? I do love the concept of what Aaron did here in all of this. But I don't think that I think that if he would have had a clearer goal from the beginning, it wouldn't have needed to be 7 years. You know, and I just don't see the point in it having been 7 years, because so much of it was expensive. You know what I'm saying? I'm telling you right now, I don't want to afford, I'd love to be able to, I don't want to afford the omnibuses and the masterpieces and the everything else that's going to come, the Masterworks edition, all these things that are going to come of this run, because it's just way too much. You know what I'm saying? Way too much. But that being said, it is a strong part of what has moved the Marvel Universe. Think about it. While it was an idea that had already come about while they were thinking about making Kamala Khan, but part of Jason Aaron's run has to be the part of the standing movement for Comicsgate in the first place, making Jane Foster into a female. It wasn't him himself who did that. No, it was his success in my opinion, very successfully pulling that off, that the rest of Marvel started moving with that flow, like lava, like hot lava, and saying, let's change all of our characters. Yeah. You can't blame Jason Aaron for that. You have to blame Marvel for that. But man, to show the influence that Aaron had over Marvel, like just, are these your balls? Got you buy them. He was literally the singular driving force in making that entire movement happen without him even intending for something like that to happen. There's no way that he could have known that Marvel was going to do that. But I think, I don't know, it's in hindsight. But anyway, yeah, wow, the consequences of that, His run was so important, Aaron's run being so important, that Marvel actually shifted gears multiple times in order to keep up with him. That is saying something. It really is. But again, if he would have had this whole, I don't know, is it maybe it's just way too much to even consider asking somebody to have the whole thing moved out. But you start with an end in mind. That's what all the great writers say. All of them. You start with the ending in mind. It's very clear to me that as great as this run was, Aaron didn't have an ending in mind. Did that work to his detriment? I'm going to say sales says no. You know what I'm saying? But as far as being an actual storyteller myself, not a writer, a storyteller, I see great flaw in the idea that he didn't have these thoughts from the very beginning. Like I said, especially the idea of the riddle of thunder. Because if that was from the beginning and end, and you still had all these little, the whispering in the ear, what do you say? What do you say? What do you say? And years later, finally, you find out what it says, and oh wow, that's huge. You know what I'm saying? Like all of that, it would have been pretty amazing. It would have been real. It would have just been better than it was if he would have had the end in mind. Yeah. I don't know. I was going to give like advice to writers, but I haven't written in so long, it's ridiculous. Who cares? At the end of the day, this was great. But man, what it could have achieved by having the end in mind. And that's really the moral of everything that I see in regards to Jason Aaron's run. Anyway, guys, I'm done. Except for one little matter. There were a bunch of people who talked about, hey, could you do King Thor issue 4/4 like it's the final issue, all the things that maybe you were one of the people who wrote those things to me in various videos. The thing that I looked for, first off, I'm okay with anybody saying, could you do such and such? Yeah, absolutely. I'm more than happy to do those. The trick is when you're a jerk off about it. I didn't feel like blocking anybody for it and like banning them from my channel for life. You know what I'm saying? I didn't feel like doing that. I've actually only done that. No, I've actually done that like I think 6 times. I think I've done that 6 times, but literally like racism was used. But I literally considered it because some people were so aggressive about it. Allow me to help you out. Your opinion quite literally means shit to me, unless you're a patron. You don't get to demand anything from me. You can straight go screw right off. You don't get to demand anything of me, children, unless you're a patron. Then, because anybody can make a request, and I can choose to honor it or not. But when you make demands, boy, you better get yourself straight, because we meet. I'm gonna straighten you out. Don't you ever make a demand. Next time I see one of those names make a demand again, I will boot your stupid ass, because I don't like stupid asses. Hope I ended this in a really good way. And I'm done. Professor Bill, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.